Hi everybody! We're back to recommend more titles and suggestions for books that you can read for free from the Carmel Clay Public Library. I'm Catherine, and today I'm joined by Carly, Kendall, Julie, and Kristen. Today we're going to be sharing some titles that transport you to another world, otherwise known as portal fantasy. Kristen, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Thanks, Catherine. I chose Queen Sweep by Ilona Andrews. Queen Sweep is by Dinah DeMille, and she's an innkeeper who runs the Gertrude Hunt, which is an inn that doesn't take in guests from other states or other countries, but other worlds. Her inn has portal doors to other places that allow those otherworldly visitors to come here. She's just started her inn when she notices some strange things happening in her local area, and she wants to protect her neighborhood. So she starts investigating, and once she does, she butts heads with a local werewolf. But after a while, they start to work together to solve the problem. And then some vampires show up and request to stay at the inn. They seem to have something to do with what's going on, but one of them decides to help them investigate. This is a very quick read, very fun, a little bit of romance as well. So that was my choice. It is also on Hoopla as an ebook. So I would suggest that for anybody who likes the Dorinda Jones books as well. Kendall, what's your suggestion?
Thanks, Kristen. I read The 10,000 Doors of January by Alix E. Harrow. So we start on the Eastern Seaboard in 1901, where January Scholar and her father live with their father's employer, Mr. Locke, in his sprawling mansion filled with peculiar treasures. As a multiracial girl, January feels much like the peculiar treasures that she's surrounded by, largely ignored and out of place. Until one day, January finds a strange book that tells her of secret doors leading to other worlds and thrilling adventures. Every page of the book she turns reveals truths about her world that she could never have imagined possible, and she soon discovers a story within the book that proves to be curiously entwined with her own. 10,000 Doors of January is a haunting and atmospheric story with lush and lyrical writing. It's full of adventure and interesting characters and self-discovery, with themes of love and family, belonging, and the power of the written word. Readers who enjoyed Erin Morgenstern's A Starless Sea and The Night Circus, or Alice Hoffman's The Museum of Extraordinary Things, will appreciate this literary fantasy. It's available in print as well as ebook and audiobook on Libby from Overdrive. Over to you, Julie.
My pick is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which leans more towards science fiction than fantasy, but definitely engages the portal concept. The story centers around Jason Dessen, a university professor from Chicago who's married with a teenage son. One evening, he joins an old friend for a drink at his neighborhood bar, and later on his way home, he's kidnapped by someone who seems vaguely familiar and is rendered unconscious. When he finally comes to, he finds himself alone and realizes he has left the reality he knows and is traveling through parallel worlds. All he wants to do is return to the life he knows and the family he loves, but he has to figure out how. This suspenseful, fast-moving story centers around identity, choices, and consequences. I liked this book because its unconventional and unpredictable storyline kept me guessing. My recommendation is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which is available in print, audiobook, and ebook. Carly, what's your suggestion this time?
Thanks, Julie. My suggestion is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan Maguire. And this book takes place in Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children. Sign outside the home reads, "No visitors, no solicitations, no quests." For those who darken its doorway, the home is a respite between two worlds. The world in reality, where they're unknown, unaccepted, and unloved, and the world in fantasy, where they can truly be who they are. So all of the children come to the home looking for a way to get back to that fantasy world, and Eleanor gives that to them, for she too has traveled through doorways and found herself. But now the sanctuary of the home has been shattered. Children have been murdered in horrible ways. And the newest resident, Nancy, is a suspect. So she and her band of misfits go together and try to figure out who is behind the gruesome murders. And it may be someone closer than they think. Would someone be willing to kill if it meant that they could unlock their doorway again? Find out by reading this short novella, which won both a Hugo and Nebula Award and launches the Wayward Children series. In spite of its length, this is a complex and unusual and very dark fantasy with a bit of a mystery story that would appeal to fans of Neil Gaiman. It's available on Hoopla and downloadable audio. Tell us what you're reading, Catherine.
You know what, Carly? I also love that book and that series. It reminded me so much of the Miss Peregrine series and the Blake Crouch book, Julie, Dark Matter. That is the ultimate portal book. It's, portals plural. It's an infinite number of portals. I highly recommend that, even if you're not a sci-fi reader. I read this a little earlier in the year, but I am going to recommend today a book by Melissa Albert called The Night Country. And although it is technically a YA book, it is definitely a crossover. And if you are an adult that loves fairy tales, really dark fairy tales, like think the Wicked series from Gregory Maguire, I think this would definitely be of interest to you. It has one of the best plucky heroine names. Her name is Alice Proserpine. And Alice Proserpine, you find out, big spoiler, in the first book that her grandmother wrote a very famous book of fairy tales. And the first book really delves into her life and how it was affected by that book. But definitely the sequel gives you more information without wanting to give too much away about some of the characters that you're introduced to in the first book, and really closes that magical chapter there. I was very satisfied with the sequel, and I just found out recently that the actual book that's featured, the fictional book that's featured in both of these stories, is going to be released. It's called Tales from the Hinterland. So those fairy tales that you are introduced to in the story, the author Melissa Albert has compiled those and is going to release those hopefully in January of next year. So if you're interested in fairy tales, dark fairy tales, and traveling to magical fairy realms, The Night Country by Melissa Albert, currently available from the Carmel Clay Public Library in print or as a digital audiobook or ebook in our Overdrive collection. Thank you all so much for joining us again this week. We hope to see you again next week, and happy reading.